Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Path of Rage and today's update to Star Citizen. Strap in folks, we've got a long one ahead of us. There is a lot of info to go. We've got the Squadron 42 monthly update for January and information to go over from last week's Inside Star Citizen and Star Citizen Live. Again, we've got a lot of info to go over, so grab a drink, strap in, and let's get into it. Beginning with the monthly report for Squadron 42, showing off all the progress that they made through the month of January. First off, we have the AI content team, where they say they progressed with the Shubin Station content for Chapter 5, with focuses on the main hangar, security, tram stations A and B, social hub, and the main bridge. The work went into utility decks, bridge, the engineering crew, security, hub patrons, vendors, and more. AI content also continued to focus on improving a variety of personal locations and lockers and how NPCs use them, how they approach them, change their outfits, entering the showers and whatnot to get dressed again. Further improving the lifelike feel of the crew when playing Squadron 42. Next update was from the AI features team, talking about polishing the technology for arced rocket pods. The system solves equations that have multiple angle and throw variables and speed variables and other range of solutions that CIG said need to be evaluated. On top of the arcing solution, collision checks had to be performed, and repurposing existing technology created for grenades and other weapons that arced fire. Finer polished behaviors of levels is currently underway to ensure that the animations and behaviors work together cohesively. On the AI tech front, they cleaned up the ability for multiple NPCs to use ladders simultaneously in the same direction, made fixes for handling fails and retries and fallbacks for the transit system. NPCs using elevators were improved to create a more efficient sequence and they won't go back and forward anymore. We'll board the elevator directly, eliminating unnecessary waiting in interim positions. For spaceships, the team made numerous bug fixes and improvements specifically for combat scenarios and AI traits, which influence the AI logic, allowing NPCs to behave differently as opposed to others. This allows the designers to balance gameplay based on enemy factions and other examples. The existing traits include Strafer Override and Speed Freak, one which forces the pilot to always choose strafing, the other which chooses higher boosts and higher speeds. Team was further refining the feel of the AI in a number of the story chapters to better tell the story. They worked on malfunctions, prone, EVA, boss fights, and further nailed down combat animations for the various enemy types you'll find in the game. They're currently implementing several new story beats apparently to better align how the levels feel. The supported mocap team will be focusing on these shoots to quickly add these improvements, hopefully. And on the facial front, they are working at additional lines for Old Man Colton to, as they say, more value added to the player's relationship with him. And that's Mark Hamill's character. From the way it looks in the trailers we've seen, you're going to be spending quite a bit of time with Old Man Colton. So anything that makes that feel even more natural, hey, I'm all here for. The Art Environment team made progress apparently with chapters 1, 4, and 5, making passes on the interior hangar, security, social, and bridge sections of Archon Station, while white box metric art for store interiors has now gone to final. The Javelin as well received a complete pass, including intact and damaged interiors, full lighting, dynamic dressing that reacts to damaged versions of the ship. Environment art also updated the Javelin's exterior to a higher standard for capital ship exteriors. Once completed, they'll move on to a damaged version. Locations in Chapter 4 were worked up to a high standard, including the interior of some asteroid truck stops and an abandoned ship. Finally, for environment art, the Odin system was updated with a new Sun Nebula that can now be seen during downtime. On the core gameplay side, more polish was put into the new star map, which I cannot wait for, including new box outs which give information about what services are provided at the selected location, which is very, very nice to know ahead of time. It also gives the option to set quantum routing, which is how it works currently right now. The fact that that will continue on is also a good thing. The character customizer gained a new improvement as well, allowing us players to save and load our characters, which enables backing them up and sharing them with other customized character appearances. A randomization function was also worked on to give better results, and the core gameplay worked alongside the back-end team to help with data serialization and compress the data size as much as possible to make sending your character data to other players in the verse as quick as possible. In the gameplay story area, the team was improving scenes across different chapters. Several scenes were updated with new motion cap at the start or end or both all the way through to pose match to systemic animations. They say that this will dovetail well with the rest of the game and makes the animations more robust. Also currently batch updating helmet animations to use the new setup, which will unblock a lot of long-standing issues. The ability to walk along holding our helmets at our side, like you see in several scenes of the video showing that they've gone to the polishing stage, has been something that's been long requested by players, and it's good to know that this is going to be coming shortly, that they're actively working on it right now. On the level design front, the social narrative picked up where they left off, trying to close out the Archon Station social area. This has a walk and talk section present, and this presents some challenges for them because the potential is there for players to leave the guide and just explore the station, and we're not sure how that will or won't break the game, what CIG is going to do to ensure that it doesn't break the game. I guess we'll have to find out. They also closed out some outstanding issues on the social section of Chapter 1 and focused on the Idris interstitials and a key scene in Chapter 8. Apparently work was going on into conversations between the Idris crew itself, who referenced the player and the current in-game situation. On the narrative front, the narrative team was further refining elements of Squadron 42, identifying key moments where loudspeakers would help drive a sense of urgency, for example. They've currently added placeholder recordings, and once they're satisfied with it, they'll be voiced with professional voice actors. They also made various UI element changes, providing new text as needed, and revising text to further add to clarity or impact. The work continued on the game's collectibles, with teams continuing to coordinate with artists to create memorable and eye-catching things for players to discover in the verse. The team also spent time delving deeper into how players will learn information on the game's lore through the Galactopedia as they naturally progress through the story. The UI team was busy last month as well, continuing to polish the vehicle UI, including getting some holographic elements to appear on physical screens for lower tech ships, improving the display of quantum travel information, and polishing the elements for the current turrets. They've added various animation screens to make in-game more interesting, including enemy tech, screens for civilian areas, and help show the story of a key section near the start of the game. In the FPS area, the UI pass was started to bring the lens up to a standard now that the visor is in good state. And final part of the update is the VFX team, which continued to support art design and cinematics for their effects requirements. This included updating dynamic fire effects, which look great, by the way, to work in additional locations to accommodate new types of gameplay scenarios. They also created a new rota system to make sure that the number of visual effect related data errors was reduced to 0, and each week an artist is picked to directly work with this QA team member to ensure the existing bug list is kept down to 0. And there you have it. That is the update for Squadron 42 for January. And there you have it. That's the Squadron 42 January update and what the dev teams have accomplished so far in the last month and continue to work on and support. A lot of good things to hear there. I am very much looking forward to Squadron 42, and I hope that all this work pays off in the end and we end up with a great video game. But for now, let's carry on and move on to the rest of the information we have for you. This week's Inside Star Citizen went into a deeper dive on the new Master Mode's flight system that is being brought to 323. The devs are describing it as a way to make combat exciting and also to make ships fit within roles the devs have envisioned for them. Progress is going well with the conversion to this new flight model, with more ships currently added to the Arena Commander modes for players to test. Each ship will start out with a set archetype as a base, with variations between ships having slightly different balancing based on what actual role that ship is meant to fill in the verse. The archetypes for the ships start at the small end with the snub fighters, which are very fast and agile, but they can't take or deal very much damage. Next up is light fighters that have high maneuverability, a decent weapon setup, and are geared towards agile, fast-paced engagements. Medium fighters will be less maneuverable, still agile for their size, with far more offensive firepower. And then heavy fighters are much more sluggish than the other archetypes, but dish out tremendous amounts of damage to anything they get in front of them. Variants to the archetypes will be things like the Interceptor variant. This variant exchanges the lateral agility for direct speed, limiting how quickly they can turn, but seriously boosting their forward speed. Racing ships such as the Mirai Fury are an example of the Interceptor variant. Another variant is the Fighter Bomber, which trades agility for durability. There will be gunboats for Constellation-sized ships, Corvettes as an archetype for ships such as the Hammerhead, and frigates, which are the largest player-owned ships in the game, such as the 890 Jump, the Idris, and the Carrack. They also went into detail a little bit more on the precision targeting mode that will come with Master Modes. This is a new way of aiming at ships which zooms in on the target and also allows you to target the individual systems on the enemy ships. Doing so in precision mode will allow your gimbaled weapons to focus on the specific target, allowing players to target such as engines or weapon systems simply by looking at them. This can eventually lead to disabling a ship enough to board it, say if you take out its engines and it can't move anymore. The precision mode will reduce the fire rate and spread of your weapons, making them more precise, allowing you to hit your target more reliably. The devs use an example where a light fighter that couldn't reliably take down larger ships could greatly help a group of players trying to do so by targeting individual systems on that ship, destroying turrets or shield generators. Ship weapons will also be balanced in archetypes now, with the three of them being anti-fighter, anti-material, and unspecialized. Anti-fighter weapons have higher fire rates and weapon velocity, allowing you to hit fast-moving targets. Anti-material weapons are for hunting larger targets that won't be able to evade fire as well. These weapons do the highest damage of all, but fire much more slowly. And then unspecialized weapons are weapons that fit somewhere in between the anti-fighter and material weapons. I'm assuming this is things like disruption cannons and similar to that. CIG didn't specify exactly what weapons they meant by it, but these are the three archetypes for ship weapons. When it comes to the precision mode, players can use or not use it as they wish. They can not use it, go full spray and pray at range, and fire at the pips and just lead the targets, hoping to hit wherever they can hit, or they can zoom in and be more precise, with the added benefit of precision mode bringing the view in closer on all these amazing looking ships that CIG has put out in the verse. And to be quite honest, I'm all about it. I've been playing with the master modes in Arena Commander because they keep adding more to it, and I very much like the change. I very much like being able to see much more reliably and much more commonly the beautiful ships in this game and the detail that goes into them. I think it's a very positive change. As I mentioned in my previous video, with a few exceptions of ships with guns built directly into them, such as the Ares fighters, there will be no longer any fixed weapons on ships. They'll all be gimbaled, with pilots being able to choose to turn the gimbals off by the sounds of it, and turrets being auto-gimbaled to make them more effective. Precision mode will be available to turrets as well, with the same reduction in fire rate and spread as the other weapons. Now, as far as the pilot goes, turning on and off the gimbals and maybe being able to still fire it as if they were fixed, that was the impression I got from what the dev said, but time will tell on that. I may have misunderstood. That is what it sounds like. We will find out when this actually fully comes out. CIG has said so far that the feedback on master modes has been overall very positive, with players being very happy with it for fleet size and multiple ship battles, while still finding the 1v1 scenarios need improvement. One benefit the devs mentioned for all the non-combat focused players out there was how the difference between standard combat mode, which is where all your fighting will take place, and the navigation mode, where you're going to be much faster, but you want to have shields and want to just sheer speed, will allow those players who are not interested in combat to worry less about being attacked simply because of the speed differences alone, as the standard combat mode will be limited to a far lower flight speed, and there will be a spin-up time to navigation mode in order to move that way. So the chances are you'll be able to fly away from any combat fairly easily, unless the enemy has an interdiction, and we'll see how that goes when the time comes. Now, as I said, I've been playing around with master modes in Arena Commander, and so far, I like the way it feels compared to the current flight model, and as I genuinely think it's a better feeling system, I am looking forward to this change coming to the live build. I am not a flight sim enthusiast, however, that takes the realism seriously. I have no interest in Microsoft Flight Simulator, for example. So those of you in the comments who do not like it, this is a big change to Star Citizen. I'm curious to see how you guys feel about master modes if you've tried it yourself. Sound off in the comments below. I genuinely want to know, what do you like about the new system versus the old, or vice versa? Again, let's hear from you. Let's talk about it. Moving on now to Star Citizen Live. The devs got into a much more in-depth look at the new distributions coming, answering a bunch of questions from the backers. So one of the questions asked was about the variety of the centers, or if there'll be giant copy-paste locations that all look exactly the same, kind of like the underground bunkers right now. CIG has said that the main structure itself, like from the exterior, certainly will look the same, but the layout around it, like the wings of the grounds around the main structure, will be varied, with some being far larger or smaller than others, and they will be different enough on the exterior that players will feel like they're visiting a new location each time. This will also apply to the branding of the centers based on who the owning faction is. Lobbies and interiors will also fit the branding of the owning faction. The centers have been placed in unique areas as well on the planets that will allow the center to be more visually memorable. CIG has said that there will be roughly 13 of these centers, and they will be located on planets only right now, not moons for the moment, as the devs have to alter some things about them for both airless and lower G environments. This means currently that the centers are only going to be on Microtech and Hurston, as Crusader is a gas giant with no land to put a center on, and ArcCorp is already one giant city planet, which will require a different type of location. CIG has said that missions of various types, such as mining, salvage, repair, what have you, will eventually be available in the centers, but that will come further down the line and not in 323. They reiterated that this is just the starting point for distribution centers, with plans for far more expansion of them in patches to come. When released, they will cater to cargo hauling, box delivery missions, which they want to rework a bit apparently to feel more like a FedEx kind of job. There will be delivery missions within the centers themselves due to their sheer size, shuffling cargo and boxes all over the site itself without ever leaving the facility. One backer asked if derelict or abandoned centers were planned, and the dev said, well, that's not at the moment, it's almost certainly down the line, as they have made every other location and ship as a derelict or abandoned to this point. They use the Pyro system as an example of where these types of abandoned distribution centers could be found in the verse, but again, there are currently no plans to start converting these assets at this time. Roads to and from the centers to other locations, such as towns and outposts, were asked about, and this has been a long time question from the Star Citizen community, and the answer was the same as it has been for years now, which was, yeah, eventually, but currently not in active development. When asked about the possibility of owning the distribution centers as an org, allowing players to operate the centers, generate missions perhaps, so forth, like various spitballing ideas, they engaged in a bit of theory crafting on how that might work, the complexities of needing supply chains and retailers and such if you were to be able to do that. None of this was anything more than theory crafting, so don't take to heart thinking that anything like that would be coming for distributions anytime soon, if at all, but it did show that CIG is actively thinking about these topics and how they will affect the development of the game. They also brought up the idea of raids. Now, I know many of us get excited at the idea of a raid in Star Citizen because raids are group activities that are an absolute blast. Play with your friends with great objectives. They did bring it up and immediately pointed out numerous times that that was for a far future, much more down the development pipeline subject. They will absolutely not be in Star Citizen remotely soon, but they have been looking into them as a type of end-game activity for players. These will require perhaps fighting in the airspace of the center, using ground vehicles to get in them, and a ton of teamwork with a group. There'll be higher tier loot, greater difficulty, which, considering the somewhat hardcore nature of Star Citizen right now, that's saying something. Lots of different challenges that they could come up with. All the types of things you might expect from a raid in the game. Jared was very quick to point out, again, that there will not only not be raids for 323, they won't be in 2024 at all. Again, raids are something that are far, far down in the development pipeline, very likely well after the game is released. Finally, the devs addressed a big concern going on with members of the community as how the centers will handle PvP and PvE in the same places. Some players are not interested in constantly engaging in player versus player, and others, that's what they look for. They were talking about how the centers will be varied in security, with some being somewhat lax, along the lines of a well-fortified underground bunker at the low end, such as in the missions we can currently play with few security guards, and others being very, very strict on enforcement, with security along the lines of a rest stop, with full turrets for outer defenses, very likely green zones where you can't even pull your weapon out at the higher end of the security range. Some centers will be friendly, others will be hostile, and other ones will be various levels of welcoming depending on the player's rep. The hostile centers will open fire on anyone in range, no questions asked. Friendly centers allow players free run of the facility as long as the player has at least a neutral rep with the owning faction, and these centers in particular are likely to have green zones like the rest stops. So non-combat focused players will be able to enjoy these places without having to constantly worry about being shot in the back. This is a temporary measure for the time being, as this will all change down the line when the law and order systems come online down in the end. And there you have it, folks. That is our current update for Star Citizen from the last week and the monthly update from January. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. Sound off in the comments what you think about this game, about the project in general, what you think about the progress that's going on. Do you think it's getting better? Do you think it's worse? I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe if you're new to help me grow the channel. Let's beat that YouTube algorithm together. And until next time, I've been Rage at Games, and I'll see you in the verse.